I was drowning in debt. Not the kind that you get from making bad choices or spending too much on things you don't need. No, this was different. This was worse. This was a betrayal. I found out in the worst way possible. I was sitting in my tiny apartment, sipping on some cheap coffee, when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I ignore unknown calls, but something told me to pick this one up. Hello, is this Daniel Thompson? Yeah, who's this? This is Kelly from Summit Loan Recovery. I'm calling about your outstanding balance of $97,000. We haven't received any payments and need to discuss your repayment options. I almost dropped my phone. 97 what? I nearly shouted. There had to be a mistake. I didn't know that kind of money. Hell, I barely had $200 in my bank account. Sir, this is regarding the personal loan you took out 2 years ago, the woman said, as if I already knew what she was talking about. I never took out any loan. My voice was shaking now. I don't know what you're talking about. There was a pause. The loan is under your name and social security number. The payments haven't been made, so it's been sent to collections. We need to discuss a repayment plan immediately, or legal action may be taken. I felt my stomach twist. My head started spinning. I was in debt, almost $100,000, and I had no idea how. Then something clicked. My parents. No, it couldn't be. Could it? I ended the call without another word and stared at my phone, my hands trembling. I didn't want to believe it. But deep down, something told me the truth was worse than I could imagine. I had to find out. After hanging up, I sat there in shock for what felt like forever. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding against my chest. It didn't make sense. None of it did. I pulled up my bank app. Maybe there was some sort of mistake. Maybe this was a scam. I went to check my credit report, and that's when the truth hit me like a truck. There it was. A massive personal loan, $80,000 originally, with interest pushing it close to $97,000, taken out 2 years ago. Under my name, with my social security number. I scrolled through the documents attached to the account. My signature was on them, but it wasn't my signature. My stomach twisted into knots. I called my mom immediately. She picked up on the third ring, sounding as if she'd just woken up. Danny, she said groggily. It's early, what's wrong? I ignored that. Mom, I said, my voice strained, did you and Dad take out a loan in my name? Silence. Then a long, shaky breath. Danny, sweetheart, listen, it's not what you think. I hung up. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. They had done this to me. The people who raised me. The people who were supposed to protect me. And they had never said a word. I stared at my phone as it started ringing. My mom again. I ignored it. Then my dad. Then my mom again. I didn't want to hear their excuses. I didn't want to hear anything. I needed to figure out what to do. I spent the next few hours doing research, my hands shaking the entire time. I read article after article about financial fraud, identity theft, and legal options. But the more I read, the more sick I felt. If my parents had forged my signature and used my social security number, this wasn't just a mistake. This was a crime. My phone kept buzzing. Text after text. Mom, Danny, please call us back. Mom, we need to talk about this. Dad, son, don't do anything stupid. Just call us. I wasn't stupid. I was desperate. And hurt. And betrayed. But I wasn't going to just sit there and let this happen. I needed answers. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of my apartment. I was going to see them in person. They had some explaining to do. My parents still lived in the same house I grew up in. The moment I pulled up to the driveway, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't even bother knocking. I barged in, and there they were. My mom sitting on the couch, her face pale, my dad standing near the kitchen, arms crossed. They looked guilty as hell. We were going to tell you, my mom said, her voice shaky. When? I exploded. After I got arrested? After they started garnishing my wages? What the hell were you thinking? My dad stepped forward. We didn't have a choice, Danny. His voice was firm, but his eyes were tired. We were drowning in debt. The house, medical bills, everything was piling up. The bank wouldn't give us a loan, but we knew you had good credit. It was just supposed to be temporary. I stared at him in disbelief. You ruined my life, I whispered. My mom started crying. Danny, we were going to pay it back. When? I shouted. It's been 2 years. You didn't even tell me. You just let me live my life like everything was fine while this debt grew bigger and bigger. My dad's jaw clenched. We thought we could handle it. Well, you didn't, I snapped. And now I'm stuck with this. What am I supposed to do? I can't afford this. I can't. My voice cracked, and I felt the weight of it all crashing down on me. My mom reached out for me, but I stepped back. Don't, I said coldly. Just don't. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then I asked the question that had been eating at me since I found out. Did you ever plan on telling me? My mom sobbed harder. My dad looked away. That was my answer. I turned and walked toward the door. Danny, my dad said, his voice tight. What are you going to do? I gripped the doorknob, so hard my knuckles turned white. I turned back and looked them both in the eyes. I'm going to fix this, I said. And I don't care what it takes. Then I walked out. But the truth was, I had no idea what to do next. I drove home in complete silence. No music. No calls. Just the sound of my own breathing and the occasional rumble of the car engine. My mind was racing, but no matter how many times I played it over in my head, I kept coming back to the same horrifying conclusion. My own parents had stolen from me. I felt sick. The second I got home, I did the only thing I could think of. I called a lawyer. I didn't even know where to start, so I just Googled fraud lawyer near me and picked the first one that had decent reviews. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number. James and Clarkson Law Offices, this is Michelle speaking. How can I help you? Hi, I stammered. I think my identity was stolen, but it was by my parents. There was a pause. That's serious, Michelle said carefully. We definitely have attorneys who handle cases like this. Do you want to schedule a consultation? Yeah, I said quickly. As soon as possible. She checked the schedule and gave me an appointment for the next day. I hung up and exhaled a shaky breath. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't let this slide. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the conversation with my parents in my head. The way my mom sobbed. The way my dad avoided my eyes. The way they acted like they had no other choice, like I was supposed to understand why they did this to me. I wanted to feel bad for them, but I didn't. I was the one who had to pay for this. Literally. The next morning, I dragged myself to the law office. The place was nice, too nice. I immediately felt out of place in my old hoodie and jeans, but I didn't care. I was here for answers, not fashion advice. A few minutes later, I was sitting across from a guy who looked like he'd been born in a suit. His name was Andrew Clarkson, and he wasted no time getting down to business. Tell me everything, he said, clicking his pen. So I did. I told him about the call from the debt collectors. About the loan. About how my parents admitted to it, but said they had no choice. When I was done, he let out a low whistle. This is bad, he said. But not impossible. Bad how? I asked. Legally, this is identity theft and fraud, Andrew explained. Since they forged your signature and took out a loan using your social security number without your knowledge, you have a solid case. I felt a lump in my throat. What happens next? Well, first, you need to file a police report. My stomach dropped. Wait, hold on, I said. Like, with the actual cops? Yes, he said simply. In order to dispute this debt and clear your name, you need to have an official report stating that this was fraud. Otherwise, as far as the lenders and the courts are concerned, you're responsible for that money. I swallowed hard. And what happens to my parents if I do that? If they're found guilty? Andrew sighed. They could be fined. Maybe probation. But depending on the amount and circumstances, they could also face jail time. Jail. For my parents. My stomach twisted into knots. I wanted them to suffer for what they did. I wanted them to pay for ruining my life. But did I really want to send them to prison? Andrew must have seen the hesitation on my face because he leaned forward. Look, I get it. They're your parents. But you have to ask yourself, do you want to spend the rest of your life paying off a debt that you didn't take out? Because if you don't act fast, that's exactly what's going to happen. I exhaled shakily. I didn't want this. Any of it. But I had no choice. Okay, I said finally. Tell me what I need to do. Filing the police report was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The officer at the station looked at me with a mix of pity and disbelief when I explained what had happened. He asked for all the documents, and I gave him copies of the loan papers, my credit report, and the messages from my parents basically admitting to what they did. When I was done, the officer sighed and nodded. All right, he said. We'll open an investigation. But just so you know, once we do, there's no going back. If we find enough evidence, the DA might press charges. I nodded, even though my stomach felt like it was tying itself into knots. I understand. I signed the statement. And just like that, my parents were under criminal investigation. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning. I had no idea how they were going to react when they found out. But I didn't have to wait long to find out, because that night there was a loud bang on my door. I froze. Then I heard my dad's voice. "Daniel, open this door right now." My blood ran cold. I slowly walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. My dad was standing outside, fists clenched, face red with anger. My mom was behind him, crying. I knew exactly why they were here. They found out. I took a deep breath and gripped the doorknob, my heart pounding. I had two choices: open the door and face them, or lock it and pretend I wasn't home. I stood there, frozen, as my dad banged on the door again, harder this time. "Daniel, don't make me break this door down." My fingers trembled against the doorknob. I had made my choice. I turned the lock and opened the door. The second I opened the door, my dad pushed past me, storming into my apartment like he owned the place. "What the hell did you do?" he spat, his face red with anger. My mom followed hesitantly, her eyes puffy and red from crying. "Danny, sweetheart, why did you go to the police?" Her voice cracked like she was the victim here. I stepped back, trying to keep my breathing steady. "I did what I had to do." "You called the cops on your own parents?" my dad barked, his voice booming in my small apartment. "You really think they're gonna let this slide? Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yeah," I shot back. "I stopped you from ruining my life any more than you already have." My mom let out a shaky sob. "We were going to fix it, Danny. We just needed more time." "You had 2 years. I snapped. "You never told me. You never even tried to make payments. You just let it sit there like it was never going to come back to me." "We had no choice," my dad yelled. "We were drowning and we thought." "You thought stealing from me was the answer?" Silence. My dad's jaw clenched. He looked away. That was all the answer I needed. I let out a bitter laugh. "Wow. You really don't feel bad, do you? You're just mad you got caught." My mom wiped her eyes. "Danny, please. We can fix this as a family. You don't have to go through with this." I looked at her, my stomach churning. "You're only saying that now because you know what's coming." My dad took a step closer, his face hard. "You need to drop this case." I stiffened. "Excuse me." "You heard me," he growled. "Call the cops. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. You don't want this going to court." I stared at him, barely able to believe what I was hearing. "You're threatening me?" His eyes darkened. "No, I'm warning you." A cold chill ran through me. For a second, I saw something in my dad's face that I had never seen before. Fear. Not for me. For himself. For the first time, he wasn't in control. He wasn't calling the shots. And it was killing him. I took a deep breath. "I'm not dropping anything." My dad's nostrils flared. "Don't be stupid, boy. This is your family." I clenched my jaw. "Not anymore." Something in him snapped. His fist slammed against the wall beside me, shaking the whole damn apartment. My mom jumped. I didn't. I wasn't scared of him anymore. "Get out," I said, my voice ice cold. My dad stared me down, breathing hard. For a moment, I thought he was going to hit me. But then he exhaled sharply and yanked the door open. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, son." He stormed out. My mom hesitated, looking at me with teary eyes. "Danny, please. Get out." Her face crumpled. But she followed him. I locked the door behind them. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had finally stood up for myself. The next few days were a nightmare. The police contacted me again, asking for more details. They were opening a full investigation. My parents weren't officially charged yet, but it was only a matter of time. Then the calls started. Not just from my parents. From family members. Aunts. Uncles. Cousins. Even my grandparents. "How could you do this to your own parents? They raised you, and this is how you repay them. You're ruining their lives, Danny." Family doesn't turn on family. At first, I tried to explain. I told them the truth. That my parents stole my identity and put me in nearly $100,000 of debt without my knowledge. But no one cared. They only saw it one way. I was sending my own parents to jail. So I stopped answering the calls. I blocked numbers. I shut out anyone who refused to listen. But it still hurt. No matter how much I tried to tell myself I was doing the right thing, a small part of me still felt like that scared little kid, desperate for his parents' approval. But I wasn't a kid anymore. And they weren't the people I thought they were. A week later, I got another call from my lawyer. "They're filing formal charges," Andrew said. "Your parents are officially being charged with identity theft, fraud, and forgery." I swallowed hard. What does that mean for them? They'll have to go to court. If convicted, they could face fines, probation, maybe even prison time. I nodded slowly. "Okay." Then he hesitated. "There's something else," he said. Your dad just hired a lawyer. And it looks like they're planning to fight this. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean fight this? They're claiming they had your permission to take out the loan. I almost dropped my phone. What? Yeah, Andrew said. They're saying you knew about the loan all along and only reported it now because of some family dispute. My hands curled into fists. They weren't just trying to get out of this. They were trying to make me look like the liar. I couldn't believe it. After everything they did, after stealing from me, lying to me, and trying to bully me into dropping the case, they were still trying to save themselves. They were willing to drag me through the mud just to avoid taking responsibility. I clenched my jaw. Okay, I said firmly. Then I'll see them in court. Because if they wanted a fight, I was ready to give them one. I never imagined I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office, preparing to take my own parents to court. But here I was. Andrew sat across from me, flipping through a folder filled with evidence, bank statements, loan documents, my credit report. We have a solid case, he said. Your parents committed fraud, and we have proof. Their entire argument hinges on convincing the court that you knew about the loan. I clenched my jaw. Which I didn't. Exactly, he nodded. And we can prove it. But even as he laid out our legal strategy, I couldn't shake the gnawing dread in my gut. This wasn't just a case. It was my family. And no matter how clear the facts were, I knew my parents would fight tooth and nail to protect themselves. I was about to find out just how far they'd go. The first court date was set for 2 months later. Those 2 months were hell. Word spread fast. My family turned against me completely. I stopped going on social media because every time I did, there was another post or message from a cousin or uncle, calling me a traitor. Blood is thicker than water. No matter what, they're still your parents. You're choosing money over family? The worst was my grandma. She left me a voicemail that shattered my heart. I don't know who you are anymore, Danny. Your mother carried you for 9 months. Your father worked every day to put food on the table for you. And this is how you repay them? Taking them to court like they're criminals? I couldn't even finish listening to it. They were criminals. But that didn't matter to them. No one cared about what they did to me. No one cared that they stole my identity, ruined my credit, and left me nearly $100,000 in debt. All they saw was that I was turning my back on my parents. I never felt more alone in my life. The night before the trial, I got a text from my mom. Mom, please, Danny. Just talk to us. Mom, we can fix this. Mom, we're still your parents. I stared at the messages, my heart pounding. Then my phone rang. My dad. I hesitated, then answered. His voice was quiet, calculated. Son, this is your last chance. Drop this case and we can put this all behind us. I swallowed. Put it behind us? Like it never happened. That's right. Like he actually believed that was an option. Dad, I said, my voice shaking. I didn't do this. You did. You stole from me. You left me with a debt that I'll be paying for the rest of my life. And now you're trying to make me look like the bad guy. Silence. Then his voice turned cold. You really want to do this? Take your own father to court? I don't have a choice. He let out a humorless laugh. All right, son. See you in court. Then he hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling like my entire world had shattered. This was it. There was no going back. The morning of the trial, I walked into the courthouse with Andrew at my side. My hands were sweaty, my stomach in knots. Then I saw them. My parents. Sitting across the room with their lawyer. My mom's eyes were red from crying. My dad sat stone-faced, his arms crossed. When my mom saw me, she looked like she was about to break down. But my dad? He didn't even flinch. I took a deep breath and forced myself to look away. This wasn't about emotions. This was about justice. The trial began. Andrew laid out everything. The forged documents, the debt collectors, the call logs proving I had no idea about the loan. Then came my parents' turn. Their lawyer stood up, straightening his tie. Your Honor, this is nothing more than a family dispute. He turned to me. Danny knew about the loan. He agreed to it. He's only filing this case now because of a personal falling out with his parents. I clenched my fists. I knew they'd try this. They were trying to make me look like some bitter, spoiled kid who turned on his parents over a stupid argument. Then came the bombshell. We have witnesses who can confirm that Danny was aware of the loan. Wait. What? Andrew stiffened beside me. Objection, Your Honor. Who are these so-called witnesses? The judge nodded. I'll allow it. Let's hear from the witness. Then I saw who walked in. My uncle. My jaw dropped. He sat down in the witness stand, cleared his throat, and said, Danny told me himself that he knew about the loan. He even said he was happy to help his parents. I froze. He was lying. Straight up lying. I stared at him in shock, my heart pounding. This wasn't just my parents anymore. My family was backing them up. They were trying to bury me. Andrew whispered, "Stay calm. We can tear this apart." But I wasn't calm. I was furious. I clenched my jaw, my whole body shaking. If they wanted to play dirty, I was ready to fight. I gripped the edge of the table, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the words coming out of my uncle's mouth. He was lying, in open court. I wanted to stand up and scream, to call him out for the liar he was, but Andrew placed a firm hand on my arm, signaling for me to keep my cool. "Stay calm," he whispered. "Let me handle this." I forced myself to breathe as Andrew stood up and walked toward the witness stand. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice steady and controlled, "you just testified that Daniel knew about this loan and even said he was happy to help. Do you have any written proof of this agreement? Perhaps a text message? An email?" My uncle shifted uncomfortably in his seat. No. But he told me in person." Andrew nodded like he expected that answer. "And when exactly did this conversation take place?" My uncle blinked. "A couple of years ago. Right before they took out the loan." Andrew raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Because Danny's phone records show that he hasn't spoken to you in over 4 years." Silence. I watched as my uncle's face paled. Andrew continued, pressing forward like a shark that smelled blood. "Tell me, Mr. Thompson, are you aware that lying under oath is a crime? It's called perjury and it carries serious consequences." My uncle swallowed hard. I must have misremembered." Andrew turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I request that this testimony be stricken from the record due to its clear inconsistencies and lack of evidence." The judge nodded. "Agreed. The witness's testimony will not be considered." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I had been holding. My uncle shrunk in his seat before the judge dismissed him. He shot my parents an apologetic glance, but my dad just glared at him like he had failed some mission. I wasn't just fighting my parents anymore. I was fighting an entire web of lies. And I was winning. The rest of the trial was a blur of evidence, cross-examinations, and legal back and forth. My parents' lawyer tried everything. They said I had signed the loan myself. They said I knew all along but was trying to get out of paying. They said I was turning on my family over a little bit of money. But every argument they threw, we crushed. Andrew pulled out the forensic report showing the signature on the loan documents was forged. He presented emails from the bank proving my parents had applied for the loan using my social security number without my consent. He even brought up my credit history, which had been spotless before this loan, proving that I had never taken out anything like this before. By the time the trial was coming to an end, my parents looked defeated. My mom wouldn't stop crying. My dad wouldn't even look at me. And when the judge read the verdict, it was like the air had been sucked out of the room. The court finds the defendants guilty of fraud, identity theft, and forgery. I closed my eyes, letting the words sink in. Guilty. They were guilty. It was over. The sentencing came a few weeks later. My parents were ordered to pay back every cent of the loan, plus damages for the emotional and financial stress they had put me through. They also faced probation and community service. Jail time was a possibility, but since this was their first offense, the judge was lenient. They wouldn't be going to prison. Part of me was relieved. Part of me wasn't. Because even after all of this, they never once apologized. Not once did they say, "I'm sorry for what we did to you." They just looked at me like I was the villain in all of this. Like I was the one who had betrayed them. After the trial, my parents cut me off completely. No calls. No messages. Nothing. And honestly, that was fine by me. I had spent my entire life wanting their approval, wanting to be the good son, wanting them to be proud of me. But in the end, they had shown me exactly who they were. And I was done. My family, most of them, still wouldn't speak to me. To them, I was the kid who sent his own parents to court. The selfish son who put money before family. They didn't care that my parents had stolen from me. They only cared that I fought back. But I don't regret it. Not for a second. Because for the first time in my life, I stood up for myself. And no matter what they think of me, I know I did the right thing. If you're ever in a situation where family takes advantage of you, don't stay silent. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. You don't owe loyalty to people who destroy your future. I learned that the hard way. But at least now, I'm free.